Hi, my name is Jackie Yeoman, and I'm a planning manager in the City of Columbus Planning Division. The Columbus Planning Academy is designed to educate community members about land use planning, what it is, how it works, and how it will benefit the area, so that you, as community members, can be more informed and involved throughout the planning process in your area. By the end of this training series, you should have a better understanding of land use principles and policies used by the City of Columbus, how land use plans are developed and used by both city staff and the community, and how land use planning can positively impact your community. Learning about these topics will allow you to more actively participate in the planning process for your neighborhood. There are 9 short videos in the series, and each one focuses on a different topic. Feel free to watch them all or jump around to the topics that interest you most. Thank you for participating in the Columbus Planning Academy. Before we move on to talk about policies and planning, in this video I am going to spend a few minutes explaining the role of the Planning Division within the city and discuss our most recent planning efforts. The Planning Division is housed within the Department of Development, and Planning Division staff work on a variety of projects and programs. Our most focused areas of work include land use planning, development review, which is the process of reviewing rezoning and council variance applications for consistency with adopted plan recommendations, growth planning and annexation, the Urban Infrastructure Recovery Fund, which is a neighborhood-based capital improvement program, and providing staff support for boards and commissions, including Historic Review Commissions, the Downtown Commission, Art Commission, University Impact District Review Board, East Franklinton Review Board, and more. There are areas of planning within the City of Columbus that the Planning Division is not responsible for. Examples of planning efforts in other city departments include park and recreation planning, transportation planning, and utility planning. Additionally, the Building and Zoning Services Department is responsible for accepting and reviewing applications for development, including permitting, site compliance, zoning clearance, and rezoning and variance requests. Columbus has a long history of planning. Our most recent comprehensive plan was completed in 1993. The comprehensive plan provided many guidelines that since that time have become code, including the Parkland Dedication Ordinance, the Traffic Standards Code, and the requirement for new development to include sidewalks. Since the 1993 comprehensive plan, Columbus has focused on area and land use plans to guide development proposals. We currently have over 40 adopted area and land use plans. Columbus Citywide Planning Policies is our most recent effort in land use planning, and we'll talk more about it in the next video. Columbus Citywide Planning Policies is a new approach to land use planning in the City of Columbus. It creates a framework or base for future land use planning in the neighborhoods. Throughout the video series, we will refer to Columbus Citywide Planning Policies as C2P2. C2P2 is similar to previously adopted area plans with the added benefit of regular updates. It includes guiding principles, design guidelines, land use policies, and a land use plan for each area of the city. Planning staff will work with each community to develop a land use plan through a public process that will include public meetings, stakeholder meetings, and public input. C2P2 is similar to previously adopted plans in many ways. The policies focus on land use and design and are used to review rezoning and variance applications. C2P2 does not change existing zoning or apply to existing development. The policies within C2P2 do not address issues such as public safety, code enforcement, stormwater, sewer, or traffic management, as these items are addressed by other departments and divisions. Columbus Citywide Planning Policies will not address every need your community has, but it is one important tool in the community toolbox. The primary difference between C2P2 and prior area plans is that C2P2 provides the ability for regular updates to the base elements of the plan. This allows every area of the city to have up-to-date policies for development review. The past area plan process made it challenging to update area plans in a timely manner, and areas with older plans did not have the benefit of current best practices to review development proposals in their area. It is optional for communities to participate in Columbus Citywide Planning Policies. We plan to begin to work with communities in 2020 to develop land use plans for areas throughout the city. Staff will work with each community to develop a land use plan that is specific to your area, and we will also provide engagement at a citywide level to update the base elements of C2P2 that work with your land use plan. In 2018, the C2P2 design guidelines were adopted for 11 communities and are now being used with each of those communities' existing adopted plan. This is called early adoption, and it is available to any interested community as a way to use the design guidelines before the area plan is updated. C2P2 land use plans were adopted in 3 communities in 2018. When a land use plan is adopted in a community, it is called complete adoption. These communities will use the base elements of C2P2, which are the guiding principles, land use policies, and design guidelines, with their updated land use plan to review development proposals. Columbus citywide planning policies provide many benefits for the community, including a framework for land use planning that is based on a consistent and equitable process, up-to-date policies available to all areas of the city, community engagement, support for housing, jobs, and transit options for a growing population, and providing a tool for our communities to use. For more information on Columbus citywide planning policies, please visit our webpage, columbus.gov/planning/C2P2. As we move through Columbus Planning Academy, there will be several planning terms that you will hear. We'd like to give you a basic review of some of the terms, and we've also provided a glossary of terms that you can download online. Land use is a term you'll be hearing a lot throughout the training series. Land use categories refer to how a piece of land is used. General categories include residential, commercial, industrial, parks and open space, and institutional uses. Zoning is local law that regulates the type of land use that may occur on a given piece of property. It also regulates the placement, spacing, and size of land and buildings. Every parcel of land in the city is associated with a zoning district. A rezoning or variance is required when a property owner seeks to develop his or her property and it is not permitted by the existing zoning district. Rezoning is the process of changing the zoning district on a specific parcel or lot. In contrast, a council variance permits a use to occur that is not permitted by the existing zoning district without changing the actual zoning district on the parcel. A standards variance permits changes to standards in the zoning, including items such as parking, height, and setbacks for a specific site. And a graphics variance permits changes to standards in the graphics code, such as sign size, height, or placement for a specific site. A parcel is a piece of land with defined boundaries. Each parcel in the plan area has an existing use, which is what is happening on the site today. The parcel highlighted on the slide is a single-unit home, and so it is classified as a residential use. If a parcel has more than one use associated with it, for example, residential and commercial, we would call that mixed use. Land use plans include the existing and recommended land use for each parcel in the area boundaries. Finally, the last definition we'll review is density. Density is defined as the number of residential units within a given area, and it is measured in terms of dwelling units per acre. For example, a development with 40 residential units on a 10-acre site has a gross density of 4 dwelling units an acre. While density measures the number of residential units per acre, it does not directly define what a neighborhood looks like. 2 neighborhoods with the same density can look very different. These 2 neighborhoods on the slide have been designed for the same site. The first provides each house with a large lot, but provides no open space or natural resource preservation. The second provides smaller individual lots with an estimated 60% open space. Looking at these 2 sites, which one do you think has more houses, or in other words, has a higher density? They're the same. Both neighborhoods are on 10 acres with 32 homes, which equals a density of 3.2 dwelling units an acre. This is called a gross density calculation because it includes the entire site and does not eliminate open space from the density calculation. You can find more about this in the glossary of terms available on the website. To wrap up the discussion on planning terms, here is a final density example. The 3 images on the screen show examples of single-unit homes and 2 different variations of multi-unit developments. All 3 sites fall within the medium density classification, illustrating the variety of developments that can occur within a similar density. To learn more about all the land use classifications, please continue in the Columbus Planning Academy video series.
Hi, my name is Mark Dravilis, and I'm the Acting Administrator for the City of Columbus Planning Division. In this video, I'll be talking to you about our guiding principles for planning in Columbus. Columbus has developed overall guiding principles to ensure that our plans address the core ingredients that are essential for quality neighborhoods. The principles are the basis for our land use policies and design guidelines that are included in Columbus citywide planning policies. The first guiding principle is healthy and complete communities. This principle states that neighborhoods should have a mix of uses that provide a range of housing types, retail and community services, and employment opportunities. Neighborhoods should also be served by multiple transportation options. This guiding principle supports revitalization of Columbus's older neighborhoods, mixed use and higher density residential development along primary corridors with access to transit, and protection and expansion of employment centers and businesses. The second guiding principle is guided growth and sustainable development. This principle states, as Columbus's population grows over the next few decades, how and where development occurs will impact the quality of life in our city. Guided and planned development will conserve both economic and environmental resources, provide access to natural areas and open space, and encourage investment in neighborhoods. This guiding principle encourages natural resource preservation, sustainable development, and creating walkable and bikeable neighborhoods with access to transit. The third guiding principle is design and character. This principle states that Columbus's diverse neighborhood character adds to the vibrancy of the city. High-quality development enhances the character of neighborhoods, creates a sense of place for residents, and attracts investment. Design guidelines provide a basis for thoughtful development that is both functional and aesthetically pleasing. This guiding principle and the associated recommendations are important because they lay the foundation for the use of design guidelines, which are often the key to creating quality development. The design guidelines are a tool used to guide and promote high-quality development within the city. City staff uses the guidelines along with land use recommendations to review rezoning and variance requests, which we will continue to discuss in the next few videos. Design guidelines address the visual component of development. They address such items as the size of buildings, building placement, building height, and site design. They are intended to provide property owners, tenants, and the design community with an understanding of design expectations for the area. Similar to land use recommendations, design guidelines are city policy and not code, and are used to review development proposals that require a rezoning or variance. While the guidelines include specific standards for design, they are intended to allow for flexibility in their application and are typically incorporated into the design of a project during the review process or as a condition of approval. There are 2 primary categories of design guidelines: residential and commercial. Residential guidelines apply to single detached units all the way through large multi-story attached units such as apartment buildings. Commercial guidelines apply to all non-residential uses. Now we will look at some examples to highlight the main concepts in the guidelines. For a single unit home, the guidelines recommend homes should face the street, and if there is a detached garage, that it should be located to the rear of the site. Front porches are encouraged as well. In many of our suburban communities, homes typically have attached garages instead of alley-facing garages. For attached garages, the guidelines recommend the garage be set back from the front elevation and a front porch. For multi-unit development, the guidelines recommend entrances, porches, or balconies should be provided on the ground floor of the building to activate the street. Variation in design, including varying roof lines, balconies, or bays, are encouraged. Building heights should transition based on surrounding uses. step down as buildings get closer to single-unit homes. In this example, the buildings transition from 60 feet in height to 35 feet in height and from multi-unit to single-unit. The design guidelines also recommend parking should be placed behind or next to the building, and that sites should typically include usable open space or a plaza or courtyard. These are examples of guidelines for residential development. For commercial development, guidelines recommend buildings be placed parallel to the street and should be transparent and include high-quality design and materials. Blank walls are not recommended to face a street. For commercial retail development, the guidelines recommend small-scale shopping centers should only have 2 rows of parking and a drive aisle or provide parking behind the building. Large-scale shopping centers may use outlet development to screen the main parking areas. The guidelines also address graphics. In suburban areas, the guidelines recommend monument-style signs to not be taller than 6 feet. And some types of signs are generally discouraged, including excessively large signs, pole signs, and automatic changeable copy signs. Several categories apply to both residential and commercial development. These include open space, connectivity, landscaping, buffering, and screening, natural resources, and public art. Open space guidelines encourage the provision of ample open space on a site and the site configuration. The guidelines on the slide are examples of open space and natural resource recommendations. Open space and natural resources should be integrated into the overall site design of new development. The guidelines also provide recommendations on how to buffer adjacent uses, appropriately screen parking, and enhance development through landscaping. The example on the slide recommends the importance of providing transitions between developments. The design guidelines are a tool used to guide and promote high-quality development within the city. City staff use the guidelines along with land use recommendations to review rezonings and variance requests, which we will continue to discuss in the next few videos. In this section of Columbus Planning Academy, we will discuss the land use policies within Columbus citywide planning policies. The City of Columbus has developed specific land use classifications and related policies to define the existing use of a property and provide a recommended future use should a change be proposed for the site. For more information, please review the C2P2 document available on the City of Columbus website. Residential uses are defined by density, or the number of dwelling units per acre of land. The categories range from very low density with a recommendation of up to 4 dwelling units per acre to very high density with a recommendation of 45 dwelling units per acre or greater. It is important to know the recommended density ranges are guidelines and not regulatory requirements. And there are times when a project may be supported with a higher density than the recommendation. High-quality architecture and site design may mitigate the impacts of higher density development in some circumstances. City staff review development proposals for overall consistency with plan recommendations, including density, architectural design, and site design. I will quickly review an example of each of the residential classifications, but remember, any type of housing can be found in all residential categories. Very low density recommends up to 4 dwelling units per acre and may be single unit homes. Low density residential recommends 4 to 6 dwelling units per acre and is typically single unit homes. Low medium density recommends 6 to 10 dwelling units per acre and may include smaller lot single unit and smaller scale multi-unit homes. Medium density recommends 10 to 16 dwelling units per acre and often includes a variety of unit types, including single unit, townhomes, and apartments. Again, notice different examples of this classification. Similar density, different type of form. Medium density recommends 16 to 24 dwelling units per acre and usually includes multi-story, multi-unit housing. It is possible for multi-unit developments to look and feel different with the same density. This is why design is also very important when reviewing development proposals, and we'll discuss this more in the design guidelines video. High-density residential recommends 24 to 45 dwelling units per acre and is typically multi-story housing. Very high density recommends more than 45 dwelling units per acre and represents the highest density residential category. The mixed-use classification allows for a variety of land uses, including residential, commercial, office, and institutional uses. Mixed-use policies encourage a mix of uses within an area, but do not require a mix of uses. Generally, mixed use is recommended along primary corridors and within established commercial centers. Similar to the residential categories, there are 3 mixed-use categories that are classified by density to account for residential development. Mixed-use 1 recommends up to 24 dwelling units per acre. Mixed-use 2 recommends between 24 and 45 dwelling units per acre, and mixed-use 3 recommends greater than 45 dwelling units per acre. The employment center classification applies to sites primarily dedicated to employment, including office uses. Industrial and warehouse uses may be appropriate in certain cases, and generally retail and residential uses are not supported in this category. But retail may be appropriate as a secondary use to the primary business. The office classification applies only to office uses. The industrial and warehouse classification includes industrial, manufacturing, and warehouse uses. Several of the land use categories are only applied to existing land uses. These include institutional, parks, and open space classifications, and all land use categories listed as other on the classification table. While our land use plans do not provide site-specific recommendations for new institutional uses or parks and recreation, these uses are addressed through the policy text and are generally supported in most areas. The institutional classification applies to schools, government property, and houses of worship. There are 3 parks and open space classifications, including parks and recreation, open space, and private open space. The definitions for each classification are provided on the classification table, which is available online. Once again, instead of providing site-specific recommendations for parks within a land use plan, the C2P2 land use policies and design guidelines recommend consideration of parks and open space in appropriate areas. Some existing land uses are more likely to be proposed for development than others, including very low density residential, institutional, private open space, and some existing office uses. Generally speaking, these types of existing uses are recommended to remain the same in the plan, but there may be other uses that are appropriate for the sites too. In order to address this issue, the land use policy text for these categories includes guidance on how to review development proposals that are not consistent with the plan recommendations. We will talk about this more and review some examples of this in the next section when we talk about land use recommendations. We are now going to show a few existing residential developments and ask you to determine the correct land use category. If you'd like, you can download the land use classification table and use it to assist you with the exercise. Site example number 1 is a single unit residential development at a density of 4 dwelling units an acre. What is the correct land use category? The correct answer is low density residential. Site example number 2 is a multi-unit residential development at a density of 18 dwelling units an acre. What is the correct land use category? The correct answer is medium-high density residential. Site example number 3 is a private golf course. What is the correct land use category? The correct answer is private open space. Site example number 4 includes both a retail and residential use. The residential use is 58 dwelling units an acre. What is the correct land use category? You are correct if you answered mixed use 3. Congratulations. Thank you for completing this video on land use policies. Please continue to the next video to learn more about how land use recommendations are determined.
Hi, my name is Christopher Lohr, and I'm a planning manager for the City of Columbus Planning Division. This is the second to last video in the Columbus Planning Academy series, and in this video we'll be discussing how recommended land use is determined during the planning process. First, it is important to know that land use recommendations do not change existing zoning, apply to existing land uses, or imply that development will occur on a site. Recommendations within a land use plan are used when an applicant proposes to develop a parcel and the development requires a zoning change or a variance. There are a series of steps taken by city staff to determine recommended land use for a site. During a planning process for an area, each piece of land within the area is provided with a recommended land use. The first step includes reviewing the existing land use, the existing zoning, and the existing density of the site. This process helps staff to determine what is already legally permitted by code and what already exists on the site. This is an important step because we want to provide recommendations that are valid, appropriate, and are consistent with what is already permitted within the existing zoning code. The second step is to apply the C2P2 guiding principles. As we reviewed earlier, the three guiding principles are healthy and complete communities, guided growth and sustainable development, and design and character. Each guiding principle has multiple principle statements that are the basis for our land use policies and recommendations. The third step is to review the recommended land use map for consistency among recommendations. In this example on the slide, sites zoned for commercial uses are shown in red, while sites zoned for residential uses are shown in yellow. A blue arrow points to a vacant site zoned for office uses. The zoning category for this site is C2, which permits office-type uses. The surrounding commercial sites allow for other commercial uses in addition to office. The zoning categories on these sites are shown as C5, C4, LC4, and C3. In this example, we would recommend all the red parcels for the same category, either commercial or mixed use, even though the existing zoning categories are slightly different, in order to bring a consistency to the recommendations. Recommended land use is illustrated in the form of a map within an area's land use plan. The example on the slide is taken from the South Linden Land Use Plan that was adopted in 2018. In this example, it is easy to see the three steps applied. In the first step, institutional uses are recommended where they already exist. In the second step, mixed use is recommended along the primary corridors of Cleveland Avenue and Hudson Street. This recommendation is supported by the guiding principles. In the third step, neighborhoods are recommended for a consistent density level. The three steps described in this video are followed to create draft recommendations for a land use plan area. Public engagement is also a key element in the land use plan process, and community stakeholders are provided opportunities to comment on draft land use recommendations. If you are currently participating in an update to your area's land use plan, please visit the Planning Division webpage on the City of Columbus website to learn more about how to get involved. Thank you for listening to our presentation on land use recommendations. We will finish the Columbus Planning Academy with a short video describing how a plan's recommendations are implemented in the development review process. Columbus citywide planning policies and C2P2 land use plans are most typically implemented through the development review process. As city policy, these documents are used as the basis to review and comment on development proposals that require a zoning change or variance from existing zoning standards. Remember, city policy does not apply to uses and standards that are already permitted by the zoning code for a given site. City staff use both C2P2 land use policies and design guidelines to review rezoning and variance applications. These policies are like two sides of the same coin. Together, they help guide and shape thoughtful, appropriate development. As we've discussed throughout the Columbus Planning Academy, land use recommendations address use. For example, a shopping center or apartment complex, while design guidelines address how the site functions and interacts with adjacent development. Area commissions and civic associations may also use the policies to review development. To review a zoning or variance application for consistency with the land use plan, follow these steps. Identify the location on the map. Use the classification table to determine the recommended land use based on color. Look up the related land use policy text. Refer to the design guidelines and determine if there is any area-specific policy that applies. The land use recommendation and area-specific policy may also be determined by using the city's online web application titled CSIR, C-S-I-R. Planning staff also use the adopted plan to comment on rezoning and variance applications. Staff reviews each case for consistency with the plan recommendations. Staff comments will generally be either support, not support, support with conditions, or will ask for more information. In cases where staff is not in support, applicants will often make changes to a proposal in order to gain staff support. If the changes are consistent with plan recommendations, staff will move to support. Comments from the Planning Division are presented to the Development Commission, the Board of Zoning Adjustment, and the Graphics Commission in a report along with comments from other departments. Congratulations, you've completed Columbus Planning Academy. We hope this course has provided you a better understanding of Columbus citywide planning policies, how land use plans are developed, and how a land use plan can be used to shape development in your community. If you'd like to learn more about Columbus citywide planning policies, please visit our webpage at www.columbus.gov/planning.